we have a really big crowd today, so I hope I can get to everybody's questions. um, so my name is Lexi Hill. Like Alex said, I'm a communication specialist here at Southern Plains Tribal Health Board. I'm really happy to be here, happy to do this presentation on how to use social media for health practices. Now, this is just going to be a really general kind of overview about how to get started on utilizing social media for your organizations, whatever they might be within the public health sphere. If you have any questions, there are some points where I will ask you guys questions. So if you just want to put those in the chat, I know that muting and unmuting can be tedious sometimes. So with that, go ahead and share my screen. Okay. So I'm going to start out with a quick land acknowledgement. I would like to recognize the traditional lands on which I am a guest on. I live, work, and create on the traditional homelands of the Kiowa, the Kickapoo, the Comanche, the Osage, and the Wichita. At this time, I would like to thank them for the continued land stewardship and the care for this area that without them, I would not be able to do what I do now. I'd like to start out with a land acknowledgement just so as Indigenous people, you know, I feel like it's important for us to recognize each other during this time and pay homage to those that, you know, were able to sustain on these lands for as long as they did. That housekeeping already done. So let's go ahead and get started. Usually when you start social media accounts, it's kind of just this idea of, so we see all these other organizations doing really well with their social media and, you know, getting lots of engagement. You know, we see what they're doing and we like that. I always think that people see what's happening on social media before they actually think about, oh, I'm going to start a social media account. Usually it's, you know, they like something and they want to replicate that. So you're thinking about starting social media accounts for your organization. And I say accounts because usually, you know, maybe we already have a Facebook page for our organization, or maybe we already have Twitter and Instagram, or you just want to expand your reach. You know, you want to expand beyond what you already have. So there's a few different steps, you know, that we're going to go over, very basic information, but also it's kind of just the foundation of what you're going to be able to do within this space, this virtual space that is taking storm, you know, and it's a new way of being able to get instant information out, get a new way to be able to get your deliverables out, a new way to connect with new communities, expand your reach. You know, there's so many possibilities within social media. And, you know, how do we tap into those? It's not going to be an overnight process. I'll tell you that. You know, that's a misconception among, you know, I think a lot of people that do start social media accounts is that it's going to be quick and fast and easy because the internet is quick and fast and relatively easy. But that's just not what we see on our side. It takes sometimes years of credibility and building the community and building a plan, a game plan to be able to, you know, actually have the outcomes that you want to see. So there's a couple of different things that we're going to talk about. We're going to start with a goals alignment, you know, game plan. Why are we even doing this? You know, what is the ultimate goal? How can we come together as a team and figure out what exactly we want to get from this? The next thing would be a branding and marketing plan. It's basically what are we going to say and how are we going to say it? Those 2 points are really important to figure out kind of in the early days of you starting your social media plan. Content creation versus content curation. Those are really important things to have, and they're both important to feature on your social media pages. And just how can you do that? I say it's the fun part because I really like to see all of the different kinds of social media creation that, like the content curation and creation that people do, how they exactly expand their voice, their brand. That's one of my favorite parts of this, is like being able to see what partners are doing and being able to even feature them sometimes. And then platforms to utilize. This is a really important part. I think that some people try to, what I've seen is, organizations will go in and just want to expand their reach on Facebook, but they're not sure about how to do that. And, giving yourself the tools and the resources in doing the research behind even tedious things like the algorithm of Facebook, the algorithm of Twitter, the algorithm of Instagram. If you want to make a TikTok, just whatever comes to mind, whatever you want to, you're able to utilize all of these tools, but how can we do that in a helpful, engaging way? And then lastly, analytics, numbers and data, and what does it all mean and how can it help me? Throughout this process, I would say being flexible and being adaptable is a huge part of, creating content and creating that content where it's engaging to your audience. So be flexible, be adaptable during this time. The internet is ever changing, and so should your marketing plan. So firstly, goals alignment, the game plan. Why are we even doing this? So there's a lot of reasons that you can start a social media account. And it's almost just like justifying why you think that you should start another or revamp even your social media account for whatever reason. Some of the reasons that we actually do in office, like at SBTHB, our creative team gets together and we have a goals alignment. We have goals alignment for different platforms that we have, that just is what works for us. But in the beginning, we have pillars, and those can carry over into your social marketing plan. So here are some of the reasons that I thought of just off the top of my head while I was doing this PowerPoint. But whatever reasons that you have, share those in the chat. I would say, what are some reasons that you can think of that would help engage your community, and like what are the reasons that you would start a social media account for your organization or your team or your grant or whatever that might be. Credibility is a huge part of social media for our organization. So credibility comes with consistency, consistent branding message, consistent voice, community engagement. How do we expand our reach to a larger community that isn't maybe a person-to-person contact, but is solely based on this remote, seemingly remote virtual space, but we can have just as fruitful conversation with these peoples in our community. Spread awareness of internal activities. It's a huge one. It's really important to know that events are coming up, or maybe you have people you want to engage with in a person-to-person contact. We spread our message about this training summit on our Facebook page, on our Twitter, and that's kind of how we get that engagement and that awareness, and we get attendees to come to places, and we get what we need beyond the word of mouth kind of marketing, which is one of the most important parts of marketing, but also within global pandemic times, usually it's not always conducive to mass word of mouth marketing. Revamping existing accounts. This is another big part about just kind of social marketing in general. If you have an account and you're really just not sure what exactly to do with that, it might be sitting there. We all see some of those social media accounts. Sometimes we want to tag someone and it's like last post was made in 2017. So maybe that's your organization. Maybe it just fell by the wayside. You had other things going on, which is totally understandable, but revamping those existing account, usually it's always better to start from ground up, utilize that account, utilize what you have, but also, create another sustainable marketing plan and something that you will be able to sustain for years to come. So, in chat, if you want to, put down some reasons why you would start social media marketing plan. Okay, so the next thing would be this, goals alignment again. Start a conversation and share ideas with your team. This is one of the most important things that I think we do in office. Oops, there we go. We do in office is we have conversations with a lot of different grants. We have conversations with so many people that are in office and, kind of help us create the content that we do. Our creative department works with so many different teams, and there's lots of different ideas floating around, and we want to make sure that we're doing the best on our part to be able to share everything that everybody has going on. But how exactly can we do that without creating those silos? That's one of the biggest parts in like a virtual world that gets really hard to navigate is how can we start a conversation and share ideas and create a sustainable goal for an entire organization in a virtual world that we have to live in as well. Well, that starts with, just coming to people and asking, hey, so we were thinking about revamping or we're thinking about creating a new platform. What would you like to see out of this? Start those conversations, have some ideas sharing meetings, and those will become more fruitful and have a better idea of exactly what they would like to see, and then what you would like to see, and kind of how to make that work for everybody. Timeframes to consider when you're kind of having these goals, alignments, plans, and like maybe starting to write some stuff down, trying to see like where exactly do we want this to go from here on. There's the short term, there's the midterm, and then there's the long term. And social media is a long term plan. You can have short term goals, of course, and those are going to be really helpful to get everything up and running and maybe kind of see where you're at, see what can change, how you can be very adaptable and very flexible within those first couple of months. Those short-term goals are really important because maybe we want to do campaigns through this amount of time, social campaigns, and this is what we see. Those midterm goals, it says 6 to 2 years. It's supposed to be 6 months to 2 years. So that 6 months to 2 years time frame, how exactly are we going to measure? What are we going to measure during this time? I know a lot of you are data people, and look at the data. The data and analytics are going to help you during this time as well. And then the long term, you can see exactly from where you started until where you've ended up years into the process, and how exactly you've created a community entirely virtually with partners, with your audience, whoever you're trying to reach. How have you expanded that? It's really amazing to see just how exactly you can build a community. Have clear ideas why you're spending this amount of time and energy and resources on social media. That's one of the most important parts. Have a clear idea going into like making a game plan, and before you start spending a lot of time and money and energy, have a clear idea about why. What is the why for you guys? What is the why? Not necessarily the how, but why are we doing this? And what can we see out of this? What kind of engagement do we want? What kind of audience are we trying to reach? Just have those clear ideas, and those can sustain you throughout this long process of creating an online community. And lastly, recruit a dream team. We have an amazing team here at SPTHB, and I'm very, very grateful to work with these people that are really passionate about what they do and have really amazing ideas of how to get the kind of engagement, how to meet the goals that we have in house, and for all of the different grants. How exactly do we recruit our dream team? Who is going to be a part of that? Is it outside help? Is it somebody internally that's really passionate and wants to try to create a virtual space, virtual community that can sustain us? But try to find those like-minded people. Try to find those people that will help you reach these goals within this virtual space. Okay, so the next is a branding and marketing plan. What are we going to say and how are we going to say it? You know, that's really important to have a clear voice with all of the stuff that is on social media and on the internet, that it can be information overload. But how can we create a unique voice that is original to us and true to our ideas and true to our goals that we've previously set out? How are we able to kind of clear away from some of that and create something that is sustainable and unique and original? And also, how do we have something that people are going to trust? Um, one of those some of those big things are, you know, research, learn from your experiences, learn from others' experience, and of course, be adaptable. Um, when you're trying to figure out what your tone and your voice on in a virtual setting is going to be, it's going to be a little bit different than, you know, maybe how your partners see you or maybe how individuals will see you. But it's trying to figure out who your audience is and how exactly you can create a voice that is unique to yourself, but also draws in exactly who you want to. That's a big part of, you know, a brand and a marketing plan. So recruit the help of marketing agencies. That's what they do. It's not just a lot of pretty logos and, you know, trying to figure out what color scheme you want. While those are very important things, and it's important to have that kind of imagery, that aesthetic that draws people in, you know, they can help you try to figure out what your voice is like, what exactly will draw people in, how exactly those goals that you set out, how those can be achieved in your short-term, mid-term, and long-term timeframes. What is your plan of action? And also, how are you going to use what you already have? There's so many resources that you possibly already have at your fingertips. Usually when people get into social marketing and social media, it's not because they don't have anything, it's because they want to feature what they do have. So find those assets, find all of the things that you do already have, and put those into your branding and marketing plan. You know, put those into some ideas that you already have, that content that you want to create, and use those as a foundation of what you'll do later on. It's not always going to be pretty. We actually were introduced to a really incredible conference organizer, and, you know, his whole philosophy is start ugly. You know, I got to read his book, and I learned a lot from that. Just like, start somewhere, because everybody has to. So that start ugly mentality can go into this content marketing plan and the branding plan as well. You know, it's not always going to be pretty, but at least you have something out there. And then you can start figuring out what works and what doesn't work, because not everything will work. And that, be adaptable, you know, be flexible, be with the times. So thing. So this is, in my opinion, the fun part of all of this is the content creation versus the content curation. Now, content creation, it's original. You know, it's using what you already have, and it's not always just about creating graphics or using Canva for everything. You know, sometimes it's having those ideas with your teams, whoever is in your organization. For us, it's grant teams. You know, having those different ideas about what they can bring to the table, how exactly can we highlight them, and then using that to create original ideas and original posts and original content that can last for however amount of time that you need. Sometimes it's a quick turnaround, you know, sometimes it's a one-time thing. Usually those are for events or health observances, but sometimes it's what we call evergreen content. That evergreen content is things that can be reutilized and utilized over and over again. And some of that is resources. You know, how do we utilize these resources and create it and kind of like translate that into social media content? Now, I wouldn't say put like an entire resource packet guide on Facebook, because that's not always the right path to go. But how do we translate what we do have, the small amount of information that will be shared on social media? Maybe what we always do is we track people back to our website. Having a strong website behind all of this really does help, and it helps with your SEO. And SEO is actually on both of these because SEO stands for search engine optimization. And that's what's going to help your brand. That's what is going to help your credibility. So that content creation is different than the content curation, but they're both very important to have within, your online virtual community sphere. Content creation, it helps with brand awareness. What is your brand? What is your marketing brand? What is your marketing? How can we see something? How do people see stuff on our Facebook page and say, oh, that's SBTHB without looking at who posted it? How are we able to create that awareness with our community that it is, it's obvious it's us. It's obvious that this is the voice that they're hearing. It's obvious that this is the social media account that they're on without even looking at the name. That's the point that personally, that's one of my goals, being able to create content and say, oh, that's who created that without even having to look at the name. So creating that brand awareness and building that credibility, something that is really important in I see tribal communities, especially with Indigenous people, is credibility. How are we able to trust you? How are we able to build that trust with these communities that, don't always have that trust within other public health organizations? And it's unfortunate, but it's what happens. How are we able to kind of separate ourselves enough from anything that causes distrust, misinformation? And that's by combating that with facts and true information and resources and a voice that is, original to us. So that's part of creating that online community as well. Now, content curation, that is building community in a different way, building community through partnership, building community by featuring those that are actually kind of on the same organizational level as us, but we're able to share resources that are credible. We partner a lot with different tribal communities around this area, and that tribal communities around this area, and highlighting them and highlighting their events is really important to us as well. Being able to, have that kind of partnership within our community and with the tribes that we serve is something that I like to see, because it shows that credibility to the audience that we're trying to reach. So the next thing would be is platforms to utilize. Where is everyone going to see our hard work? Where is everybody going to see our curated and created work? First things first, know your audience. Know exactly who you're trying to reach. If you're trying to reach young adults between 18 and 25 on Facebook, you might want to change your marketing plan. But if you're trying to reach a different audience that is already on those platforms, know what platforms, who they carry. What does Facebook look like for 40 and above? How is that something that we can utilize in that area? But how can Twitter be used for that 18 to 25 range, or Instagram for that 18 to 25 range? Or how can we create videos on a platform like TikTok that highlights all of our resources for even younger? Those are very impressionable time periods, and how are we able to create that credibility to be able to feature content? So who are you trying to reach, and what kind of interaction are you trying to achieve? Interaction doesn't always have to be likes and shares and reposts or whatever platform you might be on. Interaction can simply just be viewing. So again, knowing and having the research, the background on all of the platforms that you're trying to use, make sure you know what the demographics of those are. And that just takes a quick Google search, a couple of articles in, and you'll be a Facebook expert. You'll know exactly who's on Facebook, and exactly who's on LinkedIn or Twitter or Vine isn't around anymore, but TikTok, and everything that you might need. It's all out there. It's free resources. Research is really important. So who is on Facebook? Who's on Twitter? Who's on Instagram? Who's on TikTok? And how many platforms can you realistically manage? You might have some really grandiose ideas about, well, I want to be able to do some content on all four of these platforms. I want to be able to create content for Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and TikTok. Well, how are you going to manage those? There's management tools, but if you don't have the content for it, and if you don't have the manpower to actually filter through some of those platforms, then they're just going to be sitting there, with your brand and your logo on it, and that doesn't really create too much credibility. That doesn't go with your goals alignment. So start small, start ugly, but start somewhere. Maybe one or two in the beginning. Personally, I've seen the most of our engagement on Facebook, but we're revamping our Twitter now. We're in the process of making sure that we have that credibility built up, so we're able to create another online community that has a major Twitter following, because that's a demographic that we haven't been able to tap into yet. Facebook is totally different. It's a completely different space and sphere. And what kind of content is preferred for your platform's algorithm? Facebook algorithm is a lot different than Twitter algorithm. And Instagram, you need images. You constantly need images. And it doesn't always have to be pictures of people. It can be flyers and graphics, but it has to be images. Do you have enough images to create, even bi-weekly posts? Are you able to do that? So what kind of content is preferred for your platform's algorithm, and how can that content be featured on the right platform? That does take some research. That does take some kind of trial and error, but it is possible to do multiple platforms once you have the content and the manpower. Okay. So looking at the analytics, looking at the numbers and the data, and what does all of that mean? What does that mean for the organization? What does that mean for what we're doing? What does that mean for engagement? So going back to your goals, what were your goals lined out in the beginning of this process? And then how were you going to measure those goals? Were you going to measure your engagement with likes, with shares, with page views? Were you going to page likes, page shares? There's so many different ways to measure these things, and there's different tools out there that you could utilize. But Facebook has really good analytics already built into the platform if you have a business account. Twitter can be the same. Sometimes you will need a third-party app to do something like that. Instagram, that has really good business analytics as well. Haven't delved into the TikTok sphere, but those are the big four that I think a lot of people use. So I think you could probably find good analytics with TikTok too. But what exactly are you measuring? Is the big question. What are you measuring, and how do all those numbers and all that data actually come into play when you're looking at where you're at? What do we need to change? What do we need to do? How can we create a better online presence? So know what you're going to measure, before you start this process. And maybe those measurements, maybe some of those things change, but try to have a consistent and clear idea about what exactly you're going to measure, and look at the trends throughout time. You're not going to have immediately, like I said, it's not an overnight process. You're not immediately going to have like 10,000 followers, but maybe that increase of like 100 followers in 2 months, or another 100 in 3 months, or create realistic goals. How do I realistically measure social media success? That's individual. That's individual for each of your kind of marketing plan. But I will say it's it's trial and error. A lot of it is trial and error and trying to figure out exactly how you're going to be able to sustainably create an audience. Some of your posts are going to be really good for the week. You're going to feel on top of the world and it's going to be, oh yes, this got 3.3 thousand page shares or 1,000 page views. And then there's going to be some that have like 10. And that still happens. It happens, and it's okay that happens, because it shows you exactly what posts are good for your community, for your online community, and what posts are maybe we need to rethink this. Maybe we need to reorganize our themes for the week, or kind of our plan for an individual week basis. Myself, I take analytics from each of the weeks, and I attempt to theme each of the days of the week. So Monday and Wednesday are like job postings and events and stuff like that. Tuesday and Thursday are highlighting what our grants are doing. And then on Friday, it's a community building day. And that doesn't always work out like that. It doesn't always go with the flow of exactly what the rigid plan in my mind is, but being adaptable and being flexible to whatever is going on, because you might need to share something that happened. There's been a lot of stuff in the news lately, and with kind of a global pandemic, keep staying on your toes, but not creating an inconsistent message, but creating something that people, they'll come to you for information. They'll come to you because you're a credible source. So how can I use analytics to reevaluate the game plan? Well, using analytics to reevaluate any part of your plan is a good way to go, because that is point blank information. It's data telling you exactly how things are going, exactly how things are doing, exactly what is going well for your online community, from what you're sharing and all the resources that you have. So analytics should be used pretty consistently when you're evaluating your game plan, when you're trying to measure how well you're doing on your online and virtual community. So that's the end of all of the information, which was probably a lot, but if you guys have any questions, I would be more than happy to answer those now. You can use like the raised hand feature, you can chat, whatever it works best for you all. I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen now.
That was a really great presentation, Lexi, very informative. In your professional opinion, do you think that everyone, like every business or program, things like that, could benefit by using social media? Do you think there's any area that any industry that wouldn't be able to use social media to its full extent?
I would say that everybody is able to use social media. I think that everybody is able to use social media in their own way. It's just going to look a lot different for people. We're not Nike, so we're not going to put out ads like Nike does. We're not going to create a partnership with Facebook and try to get our brand out there, but we can utilize social media in different ways because it has this audience that we haven't been able to tap into on a ground level. And that's on a physical person to person, because when you go to a tribe, maybe you have an event to go to, that's going to be an entirely different audience than who's on social media. And actually what we see is we have more engagement from communities that we weren't able to engage with before now because of social media. And that is tapped into, how does that restructure our community needs? You know, how does that restructure what we see our community is actually asking for at this time? So I think it can be utilized for whatever industry that you're in, you know, whether it's retail or it's public health or even, I can't really think of anything. I mean, I use it for my personal baking little side gig, and that's what works for me. You know, social media has helped me, you know, bake cakes for people that I would never be able to bake cakes for before.
Nice. Cool. So actually, there's a question in the chat. I'll just read it out. Alexis Hamilton said, how would you recommend revamping a Facebook page after COVID and not having connections with the community?
So post COVID, you know, we kind of thought that there might be a post COVID already. We kind of thought we might have been in the post COVID sphere, and unfortunately, that's just not what happened. But like I said, just be adaptable. You know, be adaptable to whatever's going on. I don't think a lot of people's programs, if we're talking about specifically public health, I don't think anybody's programs for whatever they've done has necessarily stopped. COVID has just taken the front seat on a lot of people's mind. And that's okay, because that's what your community needs are right now. But when you're trying to, I don't think there would be a full revamp, because usually that's like, well, we need to rethink this entire thing. It would just be a restructuring of your marketing plan. You know, what is going to take the front seat now? What is the most important thing after COVID? And a lot of that's probably going to be mental health and substance abuse. You know, that's what we've seen. I'm not trying to predict what is going to happen after COVID, but that's what we've seen it during this time period where we had a little bit of a break. It seems like, you know, that's maybe that's the direction you go, but asking your community, you know, have those community engagement posts where it says, you know, simply, what are you looking for? You know, what do you need? What are your needs? And take those community assessments that are virtual and utilize those to help restructure some of your content. You're welcome.
All right. Does anybody else have any questions? Feel free to unmute or put it in the chat and I can read it out. I have a question while people are kind of thinking. Have you ever used SMART goals? I think those are pretty popular. It stands for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely, I believe. They're kind of how a lot of programs and things like that do evaluations or program planning. Have you ever tried to use that in social media marketing?
Yeah, so SMART goals are something that we utilize at the beginning of each of our evaluation. We have kind of an evaluation season, and so as a creative department, we reevaluate what we're doing, what our marketing plan looks like, and how to, you know, make it better every year. We kind of have those mini SMART goals meetings, but SMART goals are really just like that goals alignment. And utilizing that SMART acronym can be very helpful in trying to figure out what specific, measurable, attainable, what the R was, and realistic and timely information and goals are, because like I said, social media is not something that you can do overnight. It's not something that you start posting and all of a sudden you have thousands of followers and you're a thought leader. You know, thought leaders take time, thought leaders take energy and a lot of personal voice. Yanavea has asked, what is your favorite social media platform and why? And I would say right now, my favorite social media platform is Facebook, because it's where we see most of our virtual community. That's where we see most of the people that we know, and we can put our information out to, because they'll interact with it and they'll tell us exactly, what they want to see and how they want to see it, and they'll interact based on, what their needs are. We had a COVID-19 PPE flyer go out, and that had the highest engagement in a couple of weeks of posting. And that's just how it goes, because that's what the needs are. And so how do we restructure some of what we're doing now to highlight more of what people's needs are? We can't always say, hey, we have some free PPE, but that's what the needs are. So how are we going to meet those?
Awesome. Well, does anybody else have any questions for Lexi right now? I will put the evaluation link in the chat right now, and I'll put it again as we start to close out the session. It is this SurveyMonkey link. But yeah, if you have any other questions, feel free to put them in the chat. After the session closes out, Lexi, are you able to provide your email address just in case someone has something specific or thinks of something later on?
That is
perfect. Perfect.
Well, I want to say one big thank you for everybody who's here to hear this. I'm really happy to be able to do this. This is kind of a little bit of a passion. So to be able to connect with people, even in this virtual world, is really, I'm humbled, and I have a lot of gratitude for all of you. So I appreciate you being here. Yeah, how it goes.
All right. Thank you so much, Lexi. If anybody doesn't have any other questions, we can close out the meeting. Again, the SurveyMonkey link is in the chat for the evaluation of this session. So sorry. This is specific to this session. So if you have filled out an evaluation previously for the other 2 days, anything like that, this is again only for this session. So please fill it out. Please give us your feedback. And Lexi has put their email in the chat. So if you have anything specific that you would like to ask them, feel free to reach out. And lastly, during the lunch hour today, noon Central Time, we are having a meet and speak. This is a time for networking and sharing what you've learned, what you'd like to see, maybe next year, things like that. Feel free to come and just hang out. You can get to that session, that meet and speak session, through our webpage. I'll put the link to our webpage in the chat as well. And yeah, you can just join us for a little conversation. And again, thank you, Lexi. Since we were talking about social media, where can we find Southern Plains? Yes, go follow on Facebook. It's they're very active on there. Yeah,
SPTHB, Southern Plains Tribal Health Board. We have a Facebook and we have a Twitter, so you can follow us at SPTHB on Twitter. But if you just search Southern Plains Tribal Health Board on Facebook, you'll be able to see us then. And I think that's it.
All right. I will actually, the Zoom engineer will close out the session, and we hope to see you guys at some other of our sessions. The next session will start at 11. So look forward to seeing everyone. Have a good day.